Doc! Doc! Okay, relax, Doc. It's me. It's Martin.
No, it can't be. Just sent you back to the future.
Yeah. Oh, I know he did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future.
Great Scott.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it some style?
Looking very dapper here. It is the returning Gilmore with the new book, Why We Love Back to the Future, which is great because the last time we spoke was for your last book, which was also about Back to the Future. That was called just Back. Was that
called Back from the Future. Back from the future.
Yes. So let me ask you this: why do another book on this movie? And I know the reason why, because it's still such a huge part of our pop culture existence. But what was the timing to do this new book right here, right now?
Well, you know, we're coming up on 40 years, believe it or not, of Back to the Future being in the pop culture lexicon. And
so it was the last time 35 years?
The last time was 35 years.
Gotcha. Okay, so 40 years. Yeah.
So it's a 40-year anniversary of the first movie, but also this year's the 35th anniversary of Back to the Future 3. Last year was the 35th anniversary of Back to the Future Part 2. So a lot of anniversaries in this. And then since I published the book, there have been so much more things that had come out for Back to the Future. There's the musical that finally got out after COVID struck. You know, there was a series of comic books that came out that really dived into the theories and the lexicon and the added to the lexicon, I should say, of Back to the Future and answer these unanswerable questions. And then I started to, because of the book, started to have way more conversations about the movie with other people like yourself, or just random people at a comic convention or on a radio interview. They just want to sit and talk about their theories of Marty and Doc and how did they meet and how did this happen? Oh, can you believe they cut this scene from the movie? And then I just started talking to so many people from the movies: Crispin Glover, Leah Thompson, Christopher Lloyd, Bob Gale, Robert Zemeckis, getting to interview these people and talk to them about these movies. I just felt like I had so much more insight on the franchise than I did when I wrote the book the first time. So I said, you know what? Let me just take another swing at this thing. Let me add some more. Let me go more in depth than I did previously and really give people a quintessential fan's guide through what my opinion still is the greatest franchise in the history of cinema.
Well, it's interesting. And you mentioned in there that they were talking, Quentin Tarantino was talking about, you know, the perfect movie, and mentioned how Back to the Future is the perfect movie. And I think it's one of the reasons why like you just said, why there's so much of this ancillary projects and discussions and going on, is it really does hold up for any generation, any time frame. I mean, obviously you do, but let's discuss why you feel it is a perfect movie.
You know what? Well, first of all, when you think about the script, they literally will teach in screenwriting classes in college. They teach Back to the Future script because the way that they set everything up in the very beginning, it pays off by the end. There's no wasted scenes. There's no wasted movement. The exposition's all there, set up, payoff. It's like a really tight, well-crafted, very, very smart constructed story and script. But I think that the appeal of the movie is really the reason why we still talk about it is because, and I had this conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Chris Van Vliet. We talked about it, who actually has a contribution in the book. We talk about how Back to the Future really is a movie about choices and how the choices in your life, these small little details, like asking a girl out to a dance at your school or standing up to the bully or believing in yourself, how these small things change the complete complexion of your entire life. And who can't relate to that? Who can't relate to, man, like I know I play the game all the time. Like, wow, if I didn't do this, then that wouldn't have happened. Then that wouldn't have happened. Then that would have happened. Everybody has that internal monologue in their head. And so I think Back to the Future does something really beautiful about not only telling a time travel story, but telling a story of self-discovery and belief, and also telling a really awesome family story of getting to think just the idea of where the movie came from. You find your dad's yearbook in your basement and go, what was it like to go to school with my dad? That's also a question that we would all wonder. Like, was my dad cool in high school? Was he a geek? Like, was my mom like, you know, kind of a little bit too flirtatious, perhaps, with all the other guys? It's just such an interesting concept, but it does come down to life is all about these small choices. And that's why I think these movies just stand the test of time, especially the first one. And I agree with Quentin. It is a perfect film. There's nothing you can say, oh, they could have cut 15 minutes out of it. How many times do you say that out of a movie? Like,
all the
man,
time,
they could have shaved 15, 20 minutes off. It would have been really, really good. This one, it's like, what do you cut? You can't cut the clock tower scene. You can't cut him performing Johnny Be Good. There's no like fat there. And so, yeah, I just feel like that's why it's perfect.
I think too, it's one of those things where, and I'm saying this with the utmost respect, and you'll get where I'm coming from on this. I think with Michael Fox's condition now with the Parkinson's, and we see him, and you see him in Back to the Future as this top of his game actor who had his career not been cut short by his disability, what probably would have been even double. So I can't even imagine what a adult, aging Michael J. Fox, the parts that he could have played, and then the things he would have done. So it almost is this great point in time where he was at his peak, and just a few years later started feeling the effects of his disease. So I find it is kind of a time machine in that, to go back and watch Michael J. Fox just crushing it as this amazing role in the midst of many great ones that he played in this time frame.
Well, I mean, yeah, because he's coming off of Teen Wolf, but he's still on Family Ties, which was the number one show. He was the most popular character on this show. He was kind of the American, or the North American icon, really. And you're right, peak of his powers. Because after the Back to the Future trilogy, yeah, he had some shows. He had Spin City. He did a few movies. Greed, I think, was one of them. Doc Hollywood. There was like a few things that he did. Yeah, Secrets of My Success. There was a few things that he did. He voiced Stuart Little, right, which was a really popular movie at the time.
What was the war movie he was in? Or was it a more serious role for him?
I know exactly what you're talking about. It'll come to me. But these were peak of his powers, were the Back to the Future movies, and really for the entirety of the cast. This movie was so popular. I mean, Christopher Lloyd had went on to do several things. He was Jim Ignatowski in Taxi before this. But people think Doc Brown. He was Professor Plum in Clue, which is another favorite 85 movie of mine. I love that Clue, the movie. Nobody remembers him as Professor Plum. Everybody remembers him as Doc Brown. He went on to play Uncle Fester. He's about to play Uncle Fester again. Casualties of War.
I just saw
Casualties of War. Yeah. But he went on to play Uncle Fester again. But see, people still think of him as Doc Brown, no matter what he does. And it's really Leah Thompson, Crispin Glover. You can go through them all. Tom Wilson. They're all remembered for this movie. And Robert Zemeckis has gone on to put out incredible films, including Castaway, Forrest Gump, Flight. He just did Here last year, which was a really great movie with Tom Hanks again. But people still want to talk about Back to the Future.
Let's get into your book, because you got a lot of different subjects and topics. But you mentioned already the musical. I love, so you were saying that, let's talk about the musical. It was supposed to come out before COVID, then went down. Now it is actually out.
Yeah. They had been planning this musical like since the early 2000s. The idea had been getting thrown around, and they were ready to do it. They were ramped up. They actually started the previews over in the West End, across the pond there. And then COVID struck. So after, I think it was about a week of previews, the entire production shut down. And this dream that Bob Gale and the team of Back to the Future had of bringing this to a stage musical was vanished. It was gone, because like everything else, the world stopped. Not only did the NBA stop, Back to the Future, the musical stopped. I think the only thing that didn't stop was wrestling. That was the only constant, and it never will stop.
Right.
But so, yeah, they had to go through it. And then in 2023, it finally made its way stateside. August the 3rd, they had their official Broadway debut at the Winter Garden Theater, after a lot of time putting into this musical. I mean, they had different creative teams going to try to cast. I mean, because here's the thing. Yes, there are movies like, let's say, we've talked about James Bond before. Hey, we've seen other actors play that role. Batman, we've seen other actors play that role. Superman, same, Spider-Man, whatever. For this movie, we've never seen anyone else tackle the roles of Marty McFly and Doc Brown. So to have to go through that casting process and find the right person who can do kind of an imitation of some kind of what we saw in the movies, but actually bring it to a fresh stage.
Right, not a parody, right?
Yeah. Not a parody. And that's like a really tough line. It's like, you want to give people the characters that they know, but you don't want it to come off as, like you said, a parody of itself. So to be able to do that, and then to think about adapting it into a musical, because we think, oh, they can just do the movie on stage, right? Well, no, you got to figure out when's the right breaks for songs. What songs do we sing? How can we turn a particular scene into a song? What makes sense? And then how do you have a flying DeLorean in a musical? How do you have, Libyan nationalists chasing you down with a rocket launcher? Spoiler, you don't. How do you have a dog? How do you do all these things? And to me, when I went and saw the Broadway production of it, and Chris, I don't say this just as a Back to the Future fan. I've seen a lot of Broadway shows. I've seen a lot of live entertainment, and the production value on this show was incredible. I mean, just the way that a DeLorean appears on stage within a split second, and it does fly over the crowd. Spoiler alert for everybody out there. I mean, they made changes to the story to fit the stage, but I feel like we're never going to get it Back to the Future 4, according to Bob and Bob. But this feels like the best extension of the franchise, since Back to the Future Part 3.
What differences to the script? I know that there's a little bit of a different ending, I heard.
So the ending is different, and I actually think that it kind of works. I don't want to say it works better than the original, because it's hard to say anything does, but it's on the same level of it. So as opposed to, you remember in Back to the Future 1, at the end, Marty comes back. He's got the truck in the driveway. Yeah. The house is a little bit nicer. He and his, Crispin and Leah Thompson, they're thinner and they look more successful, and the furniture's better. And then he gets his new book, his first novel, Match Made in Space, and all these things. It's a little bit different. At the end of the musical, we come back to the Hill Valley Clock Tower, into like the town square, and it's George McFly Day, because George McFly's written a check to help save the clock tower. And because he's this successful author with this series of books. And the book that he has at the end of the musical is not A Match Made in Space. The book that he has is Back to the Future 4 is the name of his book, because he had a series of books called Back to the Future. And Back to the Future 4 is the nice little cherry on top. So it definitely nods to the fans who always wanted a Back to the Future 4. And I guess that's the closest you're ever going to get.
What kind of a fan base was at the musical? Like, what kind of a crowd did they have?
So that was what was kind of the most beautiful thing about it, was all kinds of folks, right? Young, old, but I saw a lot of dads and sons. And there was this actually a dad and a son right in front of me and my wife. And the break comes for the intermission. The kid is just so enthralled, and he turns to his dad. He must be 5 or 6, somewhere in there. He turns to his dad. He goes, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." And his dad goes, "I know, right?" And they had this beautiful father-son moment of bonding over this movie and this musical. And I thought to myself, how many times has this happened when somebody shows the movie to their kid? Right. Sure. Like, this is the coolest thing. And just as a way Bond is like a father-son thing, in my opinion, so is Back to the Future. And it's a family thing, but really, if you show this to I remember showing it to my nephews, and they're like, "How have I never seen this movie before?" Because it has everything a kid would love about it, whether it be the musical or the films. But also, when you watch it when you get older, you understand the themes so much deeper than when I did when I was watching it as a kid. Like, even with Lorraine, and I know I'm getting off of the musical, but just like even with Lorraine and her character, and being kind of this sad housewife who never really saw her full potential, or George not ever standing up for himself. When you're a kid, you can understand that. But as you get older, you really understand the pathology of the characters, which also makes this film, I think, also rewatchable. It makes this story, not just film, makes this story so entertaining and so rewatchable for people of all generations. So you had everybody out there. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen a busier merch stand. I mean, this was like, they have these great Scott hats and shirts, and they were going like NWO shirts in 98, right? I mean, they were crazy. The Winter Garden Theater was packed, man. And I'll tell you, it was as a longtime fan of the movies, I was very skeptical of a musical. I was like, yeah, is this thing going to be corny? Is it going to be silly? Is it going to be over the top? And yes, it is. It is silly. It is over the top, but it's also, they really did a great job of finding ways to incorporate the music from the original movie, because you got to think, you have Earth Angel, you have Johnny Be Good, you have Back in Time, you have Power of Love.
Wow,
those are 4 songs. Those are 4 songs that you can build the back off of for your musical, you're actually in pretty good shape to have those 4 records.
That's a great call. I forgot about the Lewis ones. If they incorporate those, that's amazing.
Oh yeah, so the Power of Love rings out, Back in Time rings out, and of course you have Earth Angel and Johnny Be Good. And the Johnny Be Good scene, the actor who played Marty in the version I saw is a guy named Casey Likes, and he crushes it, man. He crushes it. When he walked out on the stage, it felt like, it felt like Freddie Mercury, back in the day. He just captivated this whole audience. It was like Freddie at Live Aid, man. It was insane.
Did they write any additional songs for it? Like, is there like a Goldie Wilson solo or anything like that?
Yeah. There's a lot. There is a Goldie Wilson. There's a at the beginning of the second act, there's this whole thing of Doc Brown talking about what the 21st century is like, and of course, there's the joke like, "Don't go to 2020, whatever you do." And then,
right.
Actually, one of my favorite songs of the musical is when Marty goes back to 55. And reveals to Doc Brown, "Hey, you invented this time machine." There's this whole musical number of "It works. I can't believe I invented something that works." And they make a whole song out of Doc Brown's failed inventions and finally making something that works.
It's interesting, just as we were talking, I've never thought about this before, but you mentioned how, going back to see if your dad was cool in high school. It's funny because the reason why Marty is the way he is, which is kind of a chip on his shoulder, go-getter, is because his dad is the exact opposite. And because Marty was kind of put in the same category as his dad, he rebelled against that. Then he goes back in time and turns his dad into what he is, which then makes his dad successful. So it's very reciprocal.
Well, and the other interesting thing, though, is there's always been this debate. We talk about Back to the Future being a perfect movie, but there was a debate that Marty McFly's character never had an arc in the film. Like, he's essentially the same person at the beginning of the movie that he is at the end of the movie. And they say, well, that's in the sequels. They made him, he didn't like being called chicken, and he was a hothead. And that was how he's going to, have this character arc. But I talked to Bob Gale, and we actually have a conversation about it in the book, that Marty actually does have this character change in Back to the Future 1, because if you remember, Jennifer, his girlfriend, tells him, "You need to send this demo tape into the record companies."
Right.
And he goes, "What if I'm no good? What if they say no?" Which we hear George say later when he's talking about his science fiction stories. What if they say no? And there was actually a bit in the script where you see Marty dropping his demo tape into the mailbox. But because of George getting over his fear of rejection, by happenstance and kind of through the fabric of time, Marty also learns to get over his fear of rejection. So there is a character arc in that first one. And then they expanded, obviously, going forward. But you're absolutely right. Marty was the influence on his dad to help his dad stand up to the bad guys so that, he wouldn't have this fear of rejection that, Marty doesn't want to have in the future. It's confusing, but you understand what I'm saying. And
of course,
and it's one of those great parts of the movie. Yeah.
Do we see Marty drop the demo tape in the mail?
We don't. Don't. But if you look in the movie, whenever he wakes back up in the now new 1985, you can see a manila envelope like on the kitchen desk there, or the kitchen counter, that they were going to have him drop in the mailbox to kind of show that payoff.
So let's talk about this. You said that you talked to Bob Gale, one of the producers of the film. How did you end up talking? Were you interviewing him just in general? Are you tracking down these influential people just for your own personal knowledge, or were you always planning on doing another book?
No, I wasn't planning on to do a new version of the book. But what happens is, with my day gig being on the radio and in Houston, I'm a part of a local television show where we interview, the whomever is in the movie junkets, the Matthew McConaughey's, the Tom Hanks, the Kevin Costners. And, luckily you just find yourself like, "Hey, you want to talk to Bob Gale? He's got a new book out about Back to the Future." And it was called Doc Brown's Workshop and all this. I was like, yeah, I'd love to talk to Bob Gale. And so now I'm like, I have this litany of questions I want to go through and know all the answers to, and all the small little details of the movie. And same with Crispin Glover or Leah Thompson or Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd was doing something for the Discovery Channel about Back to the Future. And they were like, "Hey, do you want to have him on and you talk about Back to the Future with Christopher Lloyd?" And I'm like, no, I don't want that. Of course not. Right. And so I started to have all these conversations. And then last year, there's a big comic convention in Houston every year called Comic Palooza. And their headliners were Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd.
Wow.
And yeah, and so it was like a really awesome opportunity, and I got to go in there and actually meet them in person, and not really share long conversations or anything, but actually meeting them and actually seeing them live and in living color. It did change kind of something for me. Like, man, I feel like I have more to say on this story, and that was the impetus last year to go. You know what? Let's go back in the book. Let's make this thing the quintessential version that I always wanted it to be, with more information. It's not just those guys. I mean, I talked to Claudia Wells, who played the original Jennifer Parker, Don Fullilove, who played Mayor Goldie Wilson, Harry Waters Jr., who plays Marvin Berry, who sings the Earth Angel song. Everybody I could. Jeffrey Weissman, who actually took over for Crispin Glover in Back to the Future 2 and 3, and he was kind of the actor they tried to make look like Crispin, and there was the whole controversy of that. Just getting everyone's insight on why they think that this movie is, this film franchise rather, continues to stand the test of time. So yeah, so talking to Gail and all these guys, it's talking to you is crazy to me still, but talking to them as well, like, it's amazing where the life takes you, and to have these conversations and to be able to talk to the people who did it and made it and brought it to life, especially Bob Gale, who this whole thing was his idea.
When AEW was first starting, we went to Madison Square Garden for a Ranger game to kind of promote AEW, whatever, maybe the New York market or being on TBS. And Michael J. Fox was there as well, just kind of a couple, sections down. And they put on their Michael J. Fox, people cheer. And then it said Chris Jericho, WWE. So people cheer. I was like, oh, shit. So the word got around. So then they, later on in the game, put Chris Jericho, AEW. So I got 2 mentions in the Garden, and Michael J. Fox only got 1. So
Sounds appropriate. Sounds appropriate,
But I went over and talked to him for a bit because he's obviously a Canadian kid, small town Canadian kid as well. And, great guy. But let's talk a little bit about some of these other people that you spoke to, and what kind of insight did you get from them? For example, Crispin Glover. First of all, why wasn't he in 2 and 3? And second of all, what kind of insight did you get from him? Because we know he's notoriously eccentric.
He's very eccentric, and the reason why he wasn't in the other 2 films, it kind of is one of these he said, she said situations. Like, Crispin said he had some creative differences. The producers say he wanted too much money. We couldn't agree on a salary for him. Whatever the case might be, he didn't end up being in it. But him choosing not to return to the franchise is what changed Back to the Future 2 and 3. Because originally this movie was Back to the Future 1, the end of it was a joke. It wasn't meant to set up a franchise. They didn't really do that too much in the 80s. Sure. We're going to set up these long-term stories and we're going to have one lead into the other. That wasn't the idea at all. They thought this would be a really great way to pay off like the end of the movie is like a fun joke. Oh, where are they going to next? Oh, let your mind figure it out. They're going to the future. So when they went back to everyone in the cast and everyone said, yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. And Crispin was the only one that kind of said, I'm not feeling that, because he had issues with the ending of Back to the Future Part 1. He thought that it was too materialistic and it gave the wrong message that money equates success and money equal happiness. And that's not really what it should be. So he had some creative differences with, the way that the films were being, I guess, written or what have you. And he didn't want to return to it. So that's what made Bob Gale go, okay, then we'll just kill him off. We'll just kill George McFly. I mean, that's the power of being a writer, right? We'll just kill him off. And so that's why when they go to the Biff horrific period, the alternate 1985 and Back to the Future Part 2, that's why George McFly is dead and, Biff killed him. And that's where the idea came from. But they had to get this actor, Jeffrey Weissman, who really was in an unenviable position. Like, you have to come in, you have to kind of act like Crispin Glover. We're going to try to make people think that it's Crispin Glover and not really you.
Right.
We're going to bill you, but we want people to think it's Crispin. And they even edited in scenes from Back to the Future Part 1 and Part 2 to kind of continue that illusion. So he has a really fascinating story because he and Crispin were friends before this. And, then there was a whole lawsuit that Crispin Glover filed because they used his likeness and his life mask. And I know you've been on a lot of films, and I'm sure they've done the life cast of your mask before to do, whatever.
Now they do it digitally, but back then they would do it with,
like plaster or whatever it would be, and the resin or what have you. So they have this life mask. So they were able to actually get prosthetics to put onto Jeffrey's face. And Crispin Didn't take too kindly to that. So, he filed the lawsuit and they settled out of court. No one really knows the outcome of it, but that was why he ended up not being in it. But he's one of many people who ended up not being in either the sequels or the originals, because we know Eric Stoltz was the original Marty McFly, and they shot with him for 6 to 8 weeks, depending on who you ask.
That long?
Yeah. Well, so Tom Wilson says he was like, we were at the point in the production where we're thinking like, okay, we're talking about what we have next. Like, hey, what are you working on next? What you got lined up?
Right,
like,
right.
That was
we're
how far along they were. They were wrapping up, and they were showing the dailies to Robert Zemeckis was showing the dailies to Steven Spielberg, and was like, man, I just don't feel like this is clicking the way that we want it to. And the real issue was Eric Stoltz, great actor. Obviously, he's a really great actor and has gone on to have a good career for himself. But he was method. So he was Marty. Everyone called him Marty. He acted like Marty on and off the set and on and off takes. And they said he was playing it too seriously. Like he was acting as this was actually happening to a kid. And if you think about it, if a teenager goes back to the past, is stuck there, and his mom is starting to come on to him, you might not have such a comedic reaction like Michael J.
Like Michael did, right? Exactly. Yeah.
You might have a little bit more worrisome of how this is going to turn out.
Sure.
So he was playing it so real, and they shot for 6 to 8 weeks, and then Steven Spielberg said, "You're just not getting the laughs that you want. It's not going to work."
That's unbelievable. Just think about that for a second, Brad. I mean, obviously you're in show business, but this is a big time Hollywood blockbuster film that after 6 to 8 weeks, A, they decided to pull the plug and start from scratch just from a monetary standpoint. B, that Spielberg has the power to do that. And C, what does Eric Stoltz think? I don't want to take a gun and shoot Spielberg for that.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it was so hard to find anything with Eric Stoltz, his opinions on it. I mean, I looked long and hard, every Reddit board you can think of, every article, going through newspaper archives. And then finally, about 6 months ago, 5 or 6 months ago, a clip from the Bob Costas show Later, which was a late night half-hour talk show in the 90s.
Right.
Eric Stoltz was on there promoting some off-Broadway play. So it was very obscure clip. And he happened to get asked about what he thought about Back to the Future. And he seemed at the time that he like understood the reasoning. And he said it was tough medicine to take, but it actually made him a better actor because of it, which I think is the most healthy way to look at it. Sure. But he also said, like, it's the director's call, and you know this from being on sets and being in wrestling and stuff. Like, hey, it's not my show, it's your show. So what do you want from me? I'll facilitate the best way that I can. And he just wasn't able to do it. So Eric Stoltz gets replaced by Michael J. Fox 6 weeks in, and Michael J. Fox was filming Family Ties in the day and then coming to film Back to the Future at night. So this was round the clock, and then he ended up doing it again for the sequels because Family Ties was still on during this time he was shooting the sequels. And also, Melora Hardin was cast as the original Jennifer Parker when Eric Stoltz was in the movie, and then they had to fire her because she was taller than Michael J. Fox. Wow. So when they come back, then they're like, oh, we got to fire you because you're too tall. And it's not like they can have an apple box or apple crate in every shot for when he's with his girlfriend and make him look 6'4" or whatever. So they had to fire Melora Hardin from the movie. So there's like so many people who almost could have been either in the movie or in the sequels.
And not to mention then as we start going down the food chain here, everybody else has to redo their scenes again.
Well, and that's what Christopher Lloyd was so worried about. He was like, I just threw everything I had into this Doc Brown role. And his portrayal of the character is this constantly in crisis, huge, big, very physical performance. And you get to the 6-8 week mark, you're thinking, I'm good to go. I've shot all my scenes. And they're like, no, you got to redo them all. And thankfully they were able to keep some coverages. And if you listen to him or Tom Wilson or some of the people who had scenes with Eric, they say that like when Biff gets punched in Lou's Cafe in 1955 from Marty, they say that that's actually Eric Stoltz punching him, not Michael J. Fox. Like there was some coverages that they kept in there, but I can't imagine having to go through an entire production and then restarting it. I don't think it would ever happen today. There's no way that any studio would be like, we spent $200 million on this Iron Man. Let's do it again.
I just think from a budgetary standpoint, there's no way, but it's just interesting that even 40 years ago, things ran differently. And then once again, the fact that Spielberg had the power to pull the plug at that point. Nowadays, they'd be like, "Hey, tough luck. We're in it. It's good. It's fine. It's great. Don't worry about it." You know.
But you talk about peak of their powers. I mean, Spielberg would go on to continue, but God, man, E.T., Close Encounters, Jaws. I mean, Indiana Jones. He was.
Yeah, you don't have to say anything. He was the guy. Pretty much for all of the 80s, he was the guy. You mentioned Tom Wilson, and there's a great part in your book why Biff is the greatest heel ever. the greatest cinematic villain ever. Let's discuss that. And before you do, have you ever seen him? That thing, it's all over on TikTok and on Instagram. He sings that song called "The Question."
Oh yeah.
So good.
Stop asking me the question.
Yeah. What's Chris McGlover like? Haven't talked to him in 40 years.
What does a producer do? I don't know. Stop asking me the question. No, he's great. He's great, and Biff is great in the movie. And when you think about it, and I count him in the book, and I think it's 7. It's either 7 or I think it's 7 that it comes out to. 7 different variations of the Biff character.
Oh, Biff, really?
Yeah. Because there's the Biff we see in 85, then there's young Biff in 55, and then there's the subservient to George McFly Biff at the end of the end of the first movie in 1985. Then you see old man Biff, you see Biff Horrific, which is the most powerful Biff in the world, and then you have Griff, the grandson, and then Buford Tannen, the great grandfather. So you have 7 versions of the same character, essentially. I mean, give or take the Griff and Buford Mad Dog Tannen, but the same actor portraying 7 variations of this essentially same person and doing so really effortlessly. And I say in that Biff Horrific period, which we call the alternate 1985.
And this is when he's running the casino and he's married to Lorraine and
Yes. Yeah. And he goes back, gives himself the almanac and becomes the luckiest man and the richest man in the world or what have you. You know, when you look at that scene where he's on the top of Biff's Pleasure Paradise, and he's telling Marty, you know, it's poetic justice. I'm going to kill 2 McFlys with the same gun, right? They couldn't match the bullet that killed your old man. And the way that he delivers it is so vicious. Like it's so real though. And you feel the terror in him. So this movie that's really light and fun in a lot of ways, Tom Wilson and Biff find a way to really give us that ultimate bad guy, because you want nothing more than to him to get his comeuppance at the end of the movies, at the end of all 3 of the movies. And he does so well. And to me, you know this, a heel can really start to become cool where people like him.
Absolutely.
You know, he's a badass, you know, and you're a perfect example. When you had that 08, 09, 2010 run where you were wearing the suits and the perfect diction and the long words and the way that you portrayed that character, you made it to where there wasn't like a redeeming quality to that version of Chris Jericho. We did not want to cheer for you. We wanted to see you get beat, especially in that beautiful feud you had with Shawn. And so for me, when, you know, Hogan and those guys were doing the NWO, they became cool. They became the coolest guys on the show. Like, I know I've talked to Booker before. He goes, I went out and I was the baby face and I was getting booed, you know, working Scott Hall. Like, it killed me. It was so hard. Yeah. So, you know, so with Biff, there's not a point in any of these movies where you go, this guy's awesome. I wish I was Biff. Darth Vader, you say that guy's awesome. Everyone loves Darth Vader, you know, and he even gets redemption at the end of the series. But when I think of like great cinematic villains, and I'm sure there's a longer list than just Biff Tannen, but there's just no redeeming qualities to him. And that's why I think he's just the perfect heel. And he does so in 7 variants.
And you're right, because I always say it's a lot easier to make people hate you than it is to make them like you. But then when they start hating you, then they start liking you. And all the great villains, Darth Vader, Freddy Krueger, Hannibal Lecter,
whatever,
Schwarzenegger's Terminator.
Yeah.
If you know, by the 2nd or 3rd movie, they're instantly baby faces because they're just so cool, you know. And Biff was never that. Once again, because Marty was always cool. But that's a great point that you made. Imagine being Thomas Wilson in 1984 or whatever, getting this script, because I've never thought about it. I mean, not only is he playing the heel, I got to play this guy in 3 different variations. Like
in one movie. Yeah.
In one movie. And once again, I'm sure he did a lot of other stuff, but it's not like we know any of it. this could be, if you said these are the only 3 movies he ever made, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. And what a great 3 movies to make for an actor.
Oh yeah, I mean, and yes, he did go on to do other things. Camp Nowhere is the one that comes to mind because Christopher Lloyd's in that one too.
Right.
But yeah, he's known for these roles, and he should be because he's so good at them. And even think about this, like it's not just okay. I'm gonna play this guy, young and old, and then a little bit different in '85. Like his physicality changes.
Yeah.
In each of them. When he's in '85, he's a little bit heavier. He's drinking, all you got for me, McFly, is light beer. He's got kind of a beer belly and he's a little bit heftier. Right. And then he's this young powerhouse. I mean, Biff was huge. He was jacked. He looked jacked in 55. And then he's got to come back and he's kind of got like a little bit of a hump in his back and his shoulders are dropped and his performance is different because he's subservient to George. Oh, yes, Mr. McFly, just put on the second coat of wax right now. To be able to do that and to make it believable and pull it off, like maybe I'm putting too much into it, but I just feel like he's so good at it. And then to go do that for 2 more movies.
Yeah, he went on to voice a lot of cartoons and that sort of a thing, just in case anybody's looking to see. But great character development. And once again, like you said, pulling the bullet, using a gun to kill both McFlys. That's something that I remember, because I think
and it's irredeemable.
Yeah, exactly. But I watched Back to the Future probably on an annual basis. 2 and 3, not as much, but they're both, once again, they're not as good as 1, but they're pretty. You're talking about a real case for one of the best trilogies ever, right up there with the original Star Wars trilogy and the initial Indiana Jones trilogy as well.
Well, and I call Back to the Future a pure trilogy because the Star Wars Skywalker saga has 9 movies. The Indiana Jones, now we just got the 5th one. What was it, a year or 2 ago? Back to the Future has been 3 movies, and that's all it's ever been, and it's all it ever will be. And I can't think of one that's as satisfying. Of course, you can talk about the Dark Knight trilogy, but the 3rd one, kind of, The Dark Knight Rises, isn't like a favorite amongst people. You talk about Godfather series, Godfather Part 3, okay, but George Hamilton is the consigliere now. Okay, I guess so.
Well, the Omen trilogy from the 70s. Omen 3 is kind of just a shitty slasher movie. Like the 3rd one is always the one that's suspect. But Back to the Future,
Back to the Future gets that too, though. People don't like the 3rd one as much.
But it's stronger as a 3rd part of a series than most. I mean, maybe not Return of the Jedi or a Holy Grail, but it's still pretty damn good.
It's good. And you know what? Back to the Future 3 is, like, to me, more like Part 1 because it's Marty and Doc. They're stuck in the past.
Yeah.
There's no obvious way to get back to the future. They've got to get inventive. And then all these things end up happening. Whereas Back to the Future Part 2 is fun. And really, I don't think I've ever seen a movie like it. And you're a cinephile, so maybe you could tell me. But I don't remember a movie where half of the movie, they go back to the original movie and then see it from different perspectives and reshoot all that and make it feel like Zemeckis at this time has to be on a creative high because he's coming off Romancing the Stone. He's going into Back to the Future 1. Then he goes into Roger Rabbit, which I can't imagine how difficult of a technical challenge that was in 1987, 88 when that movie came out. And then right into the Back to the Future sequels. And to have that idea of what if we go back into the first movie is great because the original script, they weren't going to go back into the 1955. It was actually Marty goes to the future. He sees a holographic concert of Huey Lewis in the news. There's all these kinds of small little differences, but they do go with the almanac. Biff goes and becomes the most powerful man, but Marty actually goes back to 1967 instead of 1955. And Lorraine is a Vietnam protester, and Marty gets locked up for being a conscientious objector to the war. And Biff is helping, there's all kinds. It's very different from what we read. And then even in the alternate 1985, Marty and Doc are having to fly away from police helicopters, and there's a grenade launcher getting, shot at them, which I guess is a recurring theme of Back to the Future. There's a lot of grenade launchers, RPGs. But it was so different. And it was going to be one sequel. So they were going to have this one huge sprawling epic that was going to go from the future to the past and then back to the Western times, all in one movie. And then, the studio was like, this is a long script, and I don't think we need a 4-hour follow-up to Back to the Future. And that was when the idea came, well, we can split it into 2 movies and shoot them back to back the way that Superman did. I think they shot Superman 1 and 2 pretty much at the same time. They did the same thing with the Three Musketeers movies. They did those at the same time. And that was where we actually got 2 parts to Back to the Future as opposed to just a big follow-up sequel. But yeah, I mean, you can actually find the original script called Paradox online. And you can read where they were going to go with it. Very different. And the original Back to the Future was different. The first version of the script is Marty McFly's a video pirate who's ripping off movies and filming them and selling them on the black market. And he ends up finding the secret to the flux capacitor is Coca-Cola. He knocks some Coca-Cola in the flux capacitor and it works. And the end of the movie was going to be they go to a nuclear test site and the atom bomb goes off. And the only way that they the time machine was a refrigerator. They were going to nuke the fridge, which they ended up doing in Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones, that's right. Yeah, of course.
So I mean, it's so vastly different. And I guess that's also what fascinates me. And it's really going back to the theme of the movie is that one change. Marty is a video pirate and instead of a rock and roller. It changes who Marty McFly is. It's a refrigerator. No, we're going to change it into DeLorean. It changes the whole vibe of this movie. I mean, I can't imagine wanting to get in my refrigerator to go to 1955, but in Houston, they have the DeLorean headquarters, and I will go there to see if I can go back to the future in a DeLorean.
It's so amazing when you hear how these movies come together and that sort of a thing, because once again, when they wrote it, it sounds like something from a Roald Dahl, Willy Wonka, glass elevator, time machine, refrigerator, and then changing it to a DeLorean, which at the time was like the most space age car. And it's like fucking Seamus from WWE had a DeLorean. I think I told you this last time. I went to his house. It's terrible. It looks like a car. Yeah. I mean, I used to have a 76 Volare and it looked like a Volare with the doors that go up. And to this day, I mean, this is not political. I had a Tesla way before it became political. The one Tesla I did not want was the doors going, because it looks like a DeLorean Back to the Future, and it just reminds me of this cheap ass car that Seamus had.
Well, what's funny is too, you talk about those. Booker T just got the Cybertruck, and the Cybertruck to me has a DeLorean vibe to it with that stainless steel outside. And thankfully, he got it wrapped, and it looks way better.
But it looks much cooler than the actual DeLorean does.
Oh yeah. I've seen some concepts of an electric DeLorean that they're trying to make, where it looks pretty cool and pretty badass, but. Yeah, I mean, the car itself is not a great car, but to make that change is big. And there was a studio exec at the time where they were making the movie. His name was Sid Sheinberg. And he actually had a lot of suggestions, which when you think about studio notes, they're always horrible. They don't get the creativeness of it. And they always have we want to make it commercial. Seth Rogen has a great show out right now called The Studio, which makes me think of this. Like they want to make the Kool-Aid movie and things like that, make money. So, but he had several great ideas. Like he changed the character of Lorraine. He named her Lorraine. He said, Lorraine sounds better. He changed Professor Brown to Doc Brown, as opposed to a chimpanzee named Shemp. He said, you should make it a dog and call him Einstein. There are these really small things, but he had one note. It was the worst note maybe in the history of studio executives. He said the title Back to the Future is a terrible title. It's a horrible title. It makes no sense. I don't like it. He said the perfect name for this movie is Spaceman from Pluto. And that's what he wanted to name the movie. It was based off the comic that Sherman Peabody's son has at the Twin Pines Ranch. It says Space Zombies from Pluto.
Right.
And he was like, we'll say Space Zombies from Pluto. Instead of him being Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan, he can be a spaceman from Pluto, and that will be the name of the movie. That's really catchy, and it has the vibes of a 50s B movie, but it's great. And they were like, are you kidding me? We can't name this movie Spaceman from Pluto. And thankfully, they didn't get that note in. But Eli Roth did a movie called The House with a Clock in Its Walls.
Yeah.
And with Jack Black. And if you see, there's a scene where there's a movie theater marquee, and if you see playing on the theater, it's Spaceman from Pluto, which is an allusion to the terrible name that Sid Sheinberg came up with.
It reminds me of the Kevin Smith when he did a spoken word show, and he was talking about how originally he was tapped to do Wild Wild West, starring Will Smith.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And John Peters' Demand that has a giant spider in it. And he's like, this makes no sense to have a giant spider. It's a Western. I want a giant spider. And he dropped out of the project, and the movie came out. It actually had a giant spider, mechanical spider, and it was just like, What?
Well,
Yeah.
John Peters, what a run for him. But yeah, I mean, could have been a terrible name for a movie and killed it. So there's so many small things that changed this movie's outcome.
I like another one of the chapters in the book deals with all the deleted scenes. You guys go right into like this book is amazing if you are a Back to the Future, aficionado nerd, if you will. Yes. Guys talking about the benefits of deleting the scenes, and there's so much good stuff because I have not seen the deleted scenes, but as soon as I'm reading the things that got deleted, like the peanut brittle scene, it's like, oh yeah, George McFly loves peanut brittle. But there's a scene deleted that really explains the reason why he quote unquote loves peanut brittle.
Yeah, I mean, there was the scene where it shows, the neighbor from down the street has his little Girl Scout who's trying to sell peanut brittle, and he ends up strong-arming George into buying the entire lot of it because George is a pushover. So they were really trying to hit you over the head with he's a pushover. And there's a scene in the movie where you see they're watching the honeymooners, and he's just pouring this big box of peanut brittle into a bowl. And Marty's looking at it like, oh my God, this is my dad. And it's because of the scene that we saw, that we didn't get to see.
Yeah, he's eating it like he's just scarfing down on it, but it's the peanut brittle.
Exactly. And that's what, like, again, there's so many of those, and we only highlight a few of them in the book, but there's another chapter where we talk about a deleted scene from Back to the Future Part 2, where Biff, as the old man, comes back after stealing the DeLorean, and he comes back and he disappears. In the movie, you just see him sitting there, and it looks like he's been through a hard time. Like, I guess time travel takes it out on an old man. But in the deleted scene, he disappears. And I thought, man, that would have been such a great scene to leave in the movie because it shows you something happened to Biff in the past. Like, he went and altered it, and now he's disappeared like Marty was disappearing in the first movie. And they left it in the cut all the way through the test screenings. And then test audiences, they said they were too confused by it. So they took it out. But for me, I'm like, wow, this is a scene that shows you that even though we know he goes on to become the richest man in the world and marries Lorraine and all these things, still, it doesn't pay off for him. All the money in the world, something changes in his life where he dies earlier than expected. And I thought, man, that was such a scene that you probably should have left in the movie. But who am I to say? But I just think about these things too hard.
But you characterize it as a near fatal flaw to take it out.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because to me, when taking it out, again, it doesn't highlight, in my opinion, the seriousness of time travel. Because we're just assuming Biff goes and he gives the almanac, and now he's the richest man in the world. So, yeah, in 2015, he's going to still be the richest man in the world. But if you leave that in and he disappears, we know that it doesn't pay off for him. Like, our heroes are going to figure it out. And actually, I asked, there's a guy named Stephen Clark. He runs backtothefuture.com. And I asked him, like, what does Bob think about this, scene? Why did they take it out? And again, they said it was because it was confusing. But Bob's explanation of why Biff disappears, Bob Gale, that is that Lorraine ends up shooting him in the 90s. Like, I don't know where he comes up with that, but that's his idea. Lorraine shot him in the 90s, and that's why we don't see him in 2015 in this alternate timeline. But there's just things like that, just to me, that as a fan who probably spends way more time analyzing this movie than the normal person goes, wow, you could have left that in. It would have been great. But obviously, the Bobs know best, and the movies were great anyway, with or without these scenes.
I mean, you do raise a good point, because that was kind of the big, race against time in Back to the Future was Marty starts getting weak as his picture gets thinner and thinner, faded more and more. We never see that again, in especially in Part 2, where anybody's, it would have been cool to see kind of a minor character fade away and disappear.
Well, because it reinforces that time travel has real consequences.
Right.
More so than, and they try to do it in 3, where the name of the ravine is different. It's not Shonash Ravine, it's Clayton Ravine. And then Clayton doesn't go in there.
One Pine Mall.
Lone Pine Mall, right. Yeah. Like those things. And like they do it in small ways, but to me, that was like going to be a big exclamation point of, wow, this is how, this we're reinforcing for people who may not remember. Because in the 80s, it's not like you could go stream Back to the Future right before Back to the Future 2. You had to either go rent the tape or own it or what have you. And, you could maybe remember that, oh, wait, what was Marty? Why was he disappearing? I'm not sure. And to me, that was like kind of restating the consequences of time travel.
You have another great chapter in the book talking about the music, the power of love and music, and we mentioned it kind of in the Broadway play, how the music comes in. Talk about the music in Back to the Future and just how perfect it is, and just how I don't know if there's another movie that has a theme song that is so intertwined with the movie. Like you hear the song, you think of the movie, you see the movie, you think of the song.
And especially the power of love, because Huey Lewis, again, I think this is kind of a theme of this conversation, is all these guys seem to be at the peak of their powers.
Right,
This is right after sports. He's like one of the biggest acts in the world. And they go to him and say, we want to have you write a song for the movie. And he's thinking, I don't know what I'm going to really do. And when you think about it, Power of Love doesn't have anything to do with time travel.
Nothing.
Has nothing to do with the DeLorean. It doesn't really have anything to do with Marty. Back in time, more so, obviously, but Power of Love is the big song for the movie. And for some reason, it just works. And it's also, and I agree with you, where it's so intertwined with the movie, but also Power of Love is a song that I hear it in commercials. They had a Deadpool and Wolverine. There's a whole in the montage where they're visiting the different Wolverines in different timelines. They're playing Power of Love during it. It's also a song that is intertwined with Back to the Future, but has a life of its own. And I would venture to say, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it's got to be Huey Lewis's biggest record. I don't think there's a bigger song than Power of Love for Huey Lewis, in my opinion. And he was the right guy at the right time, and it was the right song in the right movie. And it's, again, why everything just seems to click. So you have Zemeckis at the peak of his powers, Michael J. Fox, Steven Spielberg, Christopher Lloyd, Huey Lewis, and they all came together to make it great. And then you have just classic 50s songs like Johnny Be Good. Who doesn't know that song? Who doesn't love Earth Angel? They're great songs to have in here. And then obviously the music with Alan Silvestri, one of the best scores of all time. He's up there to me with John Williams, based just on this score alone, how recognizable it is to this day. And but Power of Love, Huey Lewis, you couldn't have found any better than that. Because again, this is the 80s where you're coming off Axel F, the huge, synth pop stuff. Even Fletch has a kind of a synth thing. I think Harold Faltermeyer is the guy who did those. And it would have been very easy just to have that in Back to the Future. This is the sound of the day. We're going to have this kind of synth pop music in here. It's the 80s. But they didn't do that. They went with a classic orchestral score, and then they went and got a rock and roller to give them some great records for this movie.
But Marty is a rocker. That's the
Marty's
thing.
a rocker.
And I would almost surmise, once again, I don't know a quarter as much of Back to the Future as you do, but I would almost surmise that Huey submitted Back in Time as the song, and then went, we just wrote this other one. It's pretty fucking cool. Do you want to hear that one too? Yeah, sure. Back in Time is great, but what about this one? The Power of Love, like you said, it has nothing to do with it, but it has everything to do with it. Because if you look at what Back to the Future is all about, it's about the power of love, going back in time, to
making the parents fall in love with each other.
Yes, and then and saving your best friend's life, in Doc Brown. It's all intertwined. So it's one of those kind of happy accidents. I'd love to say that Huey was a prognosticator and went, no. This song really is about the overall theme of Back to the Future. I just think it's one of those things that just worked out perfectly. Yeah,
it was a killer record. It was a killer record, and it fit in the movie. They put it in, and then I think it's one of those happy accidents where people can draw the theme of it and they apply it to it, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, like Paul is dead. Here's all the clues. It's like, okay,
here's the clues. Yeah.
Sure, we'll take it.
Start figuring the conspiracies.
Yeah, and of course the classic moment that Huey actually is the guy to tell Marty that he doesn't make it to the talent show because he's just too damn loud.
He's just too damn loud, man. And it's a great cameo for him. And it also kicks off, they were going to, like I said, have a Huey Lewis holographic concert in the original version of Back to the Future Part 2 script. But then even when you go to Part 3, you have another rock and roll icon group, a band with ZZ Top, Texas royalty, and they fit right into the Old West. And they have the record double back for the soundtrack. And they were great too, and it shows you that this franchise also could tap into the power of music, man. And Silvestri has gone on to do so many great movies. I mean, he does all the Avengers films, and he was instrumental, no pun intended, with the creation of Back to the Future, the musical, and being music supervisor on that whole production. So the music is just as much, because I can hear the Back to the Future theme, and it just gets me hyped, man. It gets me ready to go.
Yes, and for those Huey Lewis enthusiasts, Chris Hayes, the guitar player, is also one of the judges that tells Marty that he's just too damn loud. As we start to wind down, let's one more quick musical note. When Marty goes back to, well, actually, there's a great scene that was deleted talking about when George McFly has been awake all night, and let's talk about that. So I was going to ask you a question about that scene, but talk about the deleted scene first.
So yeah, in the deleted scene, this is where Marty shows up in George's house. He's trying to convince Lorraine to go back, to go ask Lorraine to the dance.
Yes.
Convince George to ask him. And George is just too afraid. He's, too in his head. So he goes and pretends to be, because he knows George loves science fiction. He goes and pretends to be an alien, which I feel like is like one of the most no one talks about, like the fact that Marty pretends to be an alien in this movie. But he goes and sneaks into his house and, wakes him up with the Van Halen music playing, has a hair dryer and a radiation suit, and says he's Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan, and he chloroforms George. He chloroforms him.
And this is the deleted scene. He actually chloroforms him.
It's an extended scene where he chloroforms him and knocks him out, and that's why George oversleeps and doesn't make it to school. We thought it was just because he didn't get any sleep because he was afraid of this alien that came to visit him. But no, he was chloroformed by Marty. That checks out,
Yeah,
maybe Marty the video pirate, but
he also had a hair dryer, which we don't know the reason why, but he had packed one in his car earlier or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of the fun things to, when you like go through and you look at the scenes and you read through them and even discuss them, just figuring out like, because sometimes those deleted scenes, they do help add a little bit more. I think that cutting this scene down the way that they did for the movie and like kind of killing the chloroform from it, good idea, like overall. Same thing, like one of the reasons they changed it from the refrigerator was because they didn't want a bunch of kids getting locked in a refrigerator trying to go back in time. I also think I think cutting the chloroform is a good idea. Like you don't want kids asking their parents for chloroform for Christmas so they can knock their dad out.
The question I was going to ask is that actually Eddie Van Halen playing? Because it's just loud screaming guitar. So that's actually Van Halen.
It's Van Halen playing it. Yeah, they got him to do this specific piece of music just for the movie, and and it worked. You would think maybe they would have gotten the Van Halen record itself, but they had this piece of music, and it does. Going from 55 to 85, obviously music changes drastically. Because 55, you're just a year removed from the debut of Elvis, and rock and roll is still very country and blues heavy. Johnny B. Goode really starts to kick it off, and everything that Chuck Berry's doing into making rock and roll a little bit more electric. But going into 85, that's why it's the great joke there in the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, where Marty rips this great guitar solo and does the Pete Townsend windmill and all the things, and makes it and goes, your kids are going to love it. Because to the 55 ears, this sounds like alien music, which makes sense for Van Halen.
Well, Brad, once again, so much great stuff in here. And you mentioned earlier there will never be a Back to the Future 4. I mean, obviously with Michael's condition, probably can't. But even if, let's say, Mike was in great health, would you still think there would be no number 4?
So, I used to feel differently about this. I used to be one of those diehard fans who said, look, the trilogy's perfect. Don't touch it. Don't mess with it. Leave it alone. I have changed my mind in recent years to where, if they make a new Back to the Future television show, because I talked to the guys from Cobra Kai, and they say they have some great idea for a Back to the Future TV series. It's a perfect idea. They wouldn't tell me what it was. I tried to get it out of them, but they thought it was great. And I asked Bob Gale, I said, hey, man, the guys from Cobra Kai have a great idea for Back to the Future. They want to pitch you. And he's like, no, I don't care. These are the movies. But my mind has changed on it to where I'd be open to it. Because the thing about it is this, the Ghostbusters movie that came out, the all-female cast, I think they call it Answer the Call. Ghostbusters Answer the Call. I was open to it when it came out. I was like, look, if it's great, it's great. If it sucks, it sucks. But if it sucks, I still have the original Ghostbusters film. I went and saw it with open mind. I thought it was kind of terrible. I didn't like that version of Ghostbusters, but it didn't depreciate my love for the original two. And then they end up making subsequent movies that I think that the Afterlife was pretty good. The last one, Frozen Empire, not so much. I didn't really love it, but it still doesn't take away from the 84 classic Ghostbusters to me. So if they make a new Back to the Future movie and I love it, that's more Back to the Future. But if they make a new Back to the Future movie and it sucks, it's not going to take away my love for the original 3. So I'm open to it. But Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis have both said over our dead bodies, like it's not going to ever happen.
They just think there's no way you can improve on it.
It would be hard to improve on that trilogy. Yeah. And also, I think that, you know, if you knock it out right and you just hit it perfect, you know, why return to the well too many times? And you know, Universal calls them probably every other week.
Yeah.
Hey, can we do another Back to the Future thing? Can we do another Back to the Future? But they just stand by it.
That's my point, kind of with the Star Wars, you know, Disney owning it. I mean, some of it's great, some of it's not so great, but it just seems the concept of that DeLorean with the, you know, with just that right there is enough to be like, there is so much you could do with this. And obviously somewhere there's a, you know, a Kevin Smith or a James Gunn or a Brad Gilmore or somebody that's written the perfect script. You got to see this. And I would think at some point they will sell it to Disney if they haven't already. I mean, Universal Studios, I know, whatever. It's not even, I think we're so committed to Doc and Marty that there is other people that could find this DeLorean and a flux capacitor and, you know, have some great stories from it.
I agree with you, and I'd be open to it. Now, I represent the minority of the Back to the Future community who want it to remain as is, which is fine. I understand that, but I'm open to stories because I do think that it's completely endless. It's completely endless of what you can do and where you can go. And I'm so interested to hear one day what the Cobra Kai guys think and how they could adapt it for television, because they did a phenomenal job with the Karate Kid, and they obviously have a great love for everything 1980s. So I'd love to see it.
And do the Bobs own it? The studios own it? The Bob does, the studios.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They have the rights to it. They have the rights to make the story again if they want to, and they're unrelenting on it. And look, it's their decision. It's totally their decision. You know, maybe one day, you know, they said over their dead bodies. So, you know, unfortunately, one day that comes for everybody, and perhaps the family goes, "Hey, you know what?
I mean, didn't they just sell the James Bond franchise?
They did. The Broccoli's, after 60 years plus, said, we're getting out of the Bond business. Y'all do with it what you want.
Right.
Which again is like, look, does that mean we're probably going to get a lot more James Bond content? Sure. We're going to get television shows. We're going to have a Money Penny series, I'm sure. But,
it'd probably be awesome.
Yeah, it could be awesome. It could suck. I'm open to it either way. You know, I'll watch it, and if I love it, it's more Bond. More Back to the Future. Like, I'm open to it. I'm not going to prejudge something.
Felix Leiter, international playboy.
I'd love that prestige television, a 4-episode, you know, Netflix series.
Last question for you, Brad. Is there a favorite scene from any of the movies for you that still stands out to this day for you?
It's the silliest one, but it does stand out to me. It's right after Marty wakes up in 55, and there's the Hope Chest scene with Lorraine. And then they go down and they're having dinner and they're saying no one has 2 television sets. And Marty gets up real quick and leaves. And the grandfather, you know, his grandfather, Lorraine's dad, goes, he's an idiot. It comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots too. And for some reason, every time I watch that scene, I cackle out loud because I think it's such a funny piece of dialogue. But that's like a personal favorite. But obviously, you could choose anything from any of the movies. And in recent years, I find myself going to part 3 the most. I really love Back to the Future Part 3. And when I talked to Christopher Lloyd, he said that was his favorite. It was Back to the Future Part 3 of all of them. So there's something, I don't know if it's because I'm from Texas and we like Westerns.
Right.
And like the rodeo, but 3, there's a lot of great scenes in 3 too.
My favorite is when they go to the cafe and Goldie Wilson's, you know, sweeping the floors and is like, "What are you going to be, mayor?" He's like, "Yeah, mayor. I'm going to be mayor." And then when they land in 19, you know, the mayor Goldie Wilson said, "Save the." I was just like, "Fuck!" Like Marty gave him the idea to be the mayor of Hill Valley.
Marty gives the idea for him to be the mayor. He invents rock and roll and skateboarding all within a week.
I mean, come on, what more do you want? Marty McFly is the coolest character in cinematic history. So, Brad, great talking to you, man. Look forward to whatever you have coming up next. You're always welcome on the show. Always a fun chat, and Why We Love Back to the Future is a great read.
Appreciate that, Chris.
Cheers, man.
Thanks, man.